I really didn't expect to be making a video like this early on in the season. What are we at this point, like a week in? But here we are. We gotta talk about the Vancouver Canucks. There's slow starts to a season, and then there's this. I was gonna actually make this video yesterday, but with the Canucks playing last night, I figured I would wait and see how they perform against the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team that was also winless heading into last night's game against Vancouver. And well, things certainly didn't get any better for the Canucks after last night's game. Things definitely got a lot worse, so let's talk about it. As of today, October 19th, 2022, the Vancouver Canucks have a record of 0-3-1. They are winless through their first 4 contests of the season, but it's not just the fact that they are winless, it's how they are losing these games that makes it so bad. So after their 3rd loss of the season, they became the very first team in NHL history to start a season with 3 consecutive games where they blow a multi-goal lead and wind up losing that game. And apparently after that 3rd game, they held a players-only meeting, which, it's never a good sign when that's happening this early on in the season. But you would think after that players-only meeting, after blowing a multi-goal lead in 3 consecutive games to start the season and losing all of those games in regulation, they would come out flying the following game, especially against a team like the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, like the Canucks, like I said, they were also winless heading into that contest. This was a great opportunity for the Vancouver Canucks to get things on track, get their season going, get that donut out of the win column, and things were looking really good for the Canucks against the Blue Jackets last night. They got off to a really hot start, looked good in the first period, were up 2-0, and then the wheels came off again. They would once again blow a multi-goal lead and wind up losing that game to Columbus, extending their record-breaking start to the season of now 4 consecutive games, blowing a multi-goal lead and losing. So it's been a historic start to the season for the Canucks, definitely, just not in a good way. And it's really unfortunate because the Canucks had a lot of momentum coming into the season. Obviously, they started last year very poor under Travis Green, but then once he was fired and they brought in Bruce Boudreau, the Vancouver Canucks were fantastic. They dug themselves out of that early season hole. They were in the wild card hunt down the stretch. Of course, they didn't end up getting into the postseason, but it was a second half of the season that they could definitely build off of. And now this, you really can't start a season much worse. Obviously, this is a video where we're not really going to be talking about the Vancouver Canucks in the most positive of ways because of the start that they've had, but before we get into some of the reasons why this may be happening, some underperformers on the team. So the first positive is they're not pointless. They do have that 1 point. At least all 4 of these losses didn't come in regulation. Only 3 of them did as opposed to all 4. Now the second positive, and this is honestly the biggest one, at least they're getting multi-goal leads. Like if you were to tell a Vancouver Canucks fan that in their first 4 games to start the 22-23 season, they would have a multi-goal lead in each of those games, I'm sure Canucks fans would probably be excited about that and be happy about it. You'd think they'd have a pretty good record coming out of those 4 games, right? Now, obviously that's not the case. The outcomes haven't went the way of the Vancouver Canucks, but again, at least they're getting these leads. They just now need to stop choking those leads away. And now for the third and final positive that I want to bring up, Elias Pettersson looks great, looks dynamic as ever. He's producing with 6 points through their first 4 games. He seems like he's well on his way to having the best season of his career so far. I think this is a guy that can easily put up 80 plus points, be a point a game player. So those are a couple of positives that I think you can take away from the start of the Canucks season. As bad as things may look, there is always things that you can look at and say, okay, well, at least this is happening, or at least this is happening. So those are a couple of things that I would be happy about if I was a Canucks fan. Not really the first one. I was kind of joking when I said, well, at least they have 1 point instead of 0, but the last 2 for sure. Now, let's get into some of the not so positive things about the Canucks start to the season. One thing I do want to mention is I feel like this start of the season is definitely something that can get you in your own head quickly. And honestly, I feel like we saw that in last night's game against the Blue Jackets. And what I mean by this is yeah, blowing a 2-goal lead in your first game to start a season and losing, it's not a good thing, but it happens, right? Doing it in 2 straight games to start the season, then it's all right, guys, come on, let's get it together. Next thing you know, you find yourself in game 3 of the season, once again with a multi-goal lead, and all of a sudden, a lot of the guys on the team, gripping their sticks a little bit tighter, not playing the game that they usually play. Pretty much what I'm getting at is, in these kind of situations, it can quickly turn into you playing against yourself, getting in your own head, and I think that is something that, again, is happening with the Canucks right now. They're kind of beating themselves, as you would expect for a team that is winless through 4 games. They definitely have some underperformers, guys you expect to play at a lot higher of a level. JT Miller, I would say, is the biggest one, although he does have 3 points in 4 games so far. But just ask any Vancouver Canucks fans, he has not been good. He's looked very poor. There was one point where through their first 2 games of the season, he was on the ice for all 8 goals against. He was solely responsible for the 3rd goal Philadelphia scored in Game 2 against the Vancouver Canucks. That goal ended up being the game winner. He didn't look good on that play. Some stats for you here. He's currently rocking an on-ice expected goals for percentage through the first 4 games of 25.88 according to Natural Stat Trick, which is absolutely miserable. That basically means the Vancouver Canucks are getting absolutely caved in terms of high danger scoring chances when JT Miller is on the ice, so he definitely needs to turn things around. He needs to be much better, and I'm sure he knows he needs to be much better if the Vancouver Canucks want to get this thing back on track. Another player that has really been underperforming so far, goaltender Thatcher Demko. This is a guy that a lot of people, including myself, viewed as a bona fide top 10 starter in the league heading into the season. He was fantastic the past couple years for Vancouver. He actually didn't start last night against Columbus, but through the first 3 games of the season, Thatcher Demko started all 3 of those, lost all 3 in regulation, has a save percentage of just .847, and has a goal saved above expected of -4.28, which is 2nd worst in the league, only ahead of Fleury. That's just quite frankly not good enough, and just like I said about JT Miller, I'm sure Thatcher Demko knows that he has to be better if the Canucks want to have any chance of having a successful season, being in the playoff race. And I'm not panicking when it comes to Thatcher Demko necessarily. I'm very confident in his abilities. Like I said, I look at him as a bona fide top 10 goalie in the league. This start of the season doesn't change that. I think he's earned that respect. He will bounce back. However, the Vancouver Canucks as a team, like if I were a fan of the Canucks, I don't think I'd be in full-blown panic mode just yet, but obviously this is an incredibly frustrating start to the season. It's not like the Vancouver Canucks are getting just caved in from start to finish in all these games. They're giving Canucks fans hope and then just taking it right away from them. It is only 4 games, but on one hand, like say the Canucks win 4 of their next 5 games, that's still just a 4-4-1 record, and there's obviously no guarantee they do win 4 of the next 5 games. What I'm getting at here is the Canucks are behind the 8 ball, and this team knows better than anybody how difficult it is to dig out of an early season hole. I mentioned last season to start out this video, although they were fantastic under Bruce Boudreau, they still missed the playoffs. I am really interested to see how the Canucks are going to bounce back from this. I do feel like a little bit of the blame has to go on the leadership group, like head coach Bruce Boudreau. I know he's been fantastic and Canucks fans love him, but 4 multi-goal blown leads to start the season, he has to wear a little bit of that blame. Bo Horvat as well, the captain of this team. I'm not saying he's been bad through the first 4 games of the season. I'm just more speaking to the leadership aspect. It's his responsibility to, rally the troops, try to figure this thing out. Now, before I finish out this video, let's take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Vancouver Canucks, the next 5 games. Their next game, they are at Minnesota on Thursday. That is going to be a tough game, although Minnesota is a winless team like the Vancouver Canucks. They're going to be hungry to get their first win. We know the Wild are better than how they've started the season, so that's definitely going to be a really interesting game. One of those teams are going to get their first win. They then play Buffalo at home on Saturday. That is a must-win game for the Vancouver Canucks as far as I'm concerned, as must-win as a game can be, and in the first couple weeks of a season. After Buffalo, they are at home versus Carolina on Monday the 24th. They're at Seattle on Thursday the 27th, and then back home on Friday the 28th against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So those are the next 5 matchups for the Canucks. Definitely some winnable games in there. They better beat Buffalo and Seattle. I would definitely say if they come out of these next 5 games with less than 2 wins, like say they go 1-4 or something like that, then I definitely think it's panic time. Obviously 82 games is a very long season, but things can definitely get away from you quickly. I am really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on the Canucks and their start to the season, especially if you're a fan of the team. Please chime in. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say, and while you're down there, if you could, please be sure to drop a like on this video. That is the best way to show your support and let me know that you want to see more videos like this throughout the season. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.